Forget the quiet white ruins you've seen in textbooks and travel photos. Strip away the broken columns and faded stone. Now imagine the same city in the year 125 AD, not as a relic, but as the beating heart of the most powerful civilization on Earth. This is not a story about collapse. This is Rome at its peak. Under the rule of Hadrian, Rome was not decaying marble. It was polished stone blazing under the Mediterranean sun, streets alive with traders, senators, soldiers, engineers, and entrepreneurs of the ancient world. Nearly 1 million people moved through its avenues. Gold flashed from temple roofs. Crimson and deep blue pigments covered statues we now see as pale ghosts. The city was loud, strategic, organized, unstoppable. All roads truly led here. From the misty edges of Britain to the deserts of the Middle East, highways of stone funneled wealth, information, and power into a single urban engine. If the ancient world were a body, Rome was its heart, pumping law, currency, language, and ambition across 3 continents. What you're
Dưới
about to
thời
see is
Hadrian,
a full
La Mã không phải
reconstruction of
là đá
that
cẩm
world,
thạch đang phân hủy.
rebuilt with modern
Đó là đá
technology
bóng
so
loáng
you
rực
can
cháy dưới nắng
experience
Địa Trung
Rome as
Hải.
its citizens did, vibrant, engineered, intentional. Because to understand the systems we live in today, our cities, our laws, even our idea of citizenship, you have to see where they were perfected. If you value deep, cinematic explorations of history brought back to life, subscribe now and join us. We're not just studying the past, we're rebuilding it one civilization at a time. By the year 125 AD, Rome was something the world had never seen before, a city approaching 1 million people. Try to put that into perspective. In an era when most of humanity lived in mud brick villages or small agrarian towns, Rome pulsed with a population larger than any city in the Western world would see again for nearly 2,000 years. Not until industrial London would the West rival the density and scale that Rome had already mastered. This was not an accident of growth. It was deliberate design. The transformation began generations earlier. When Augustus famously declared that he had found Rome a city of brick and left it a city of marble, he was not boasting about decoration. He was describing a strategic rebranding of power. Architecture became policy carved in stone. Massive temples, basilicas, triumphal arches, and public squares were not merely buildings, they were psychological infrastructure. They told every visitor, merchant, or foreign envoy the same message: this is what permanence looks like. By 125 AD, under Hadrian, that vision had matured into a fully realized imperial capital. Marble gleamed in the Mediterranean sun. Columns rose in perfect proportion. Public spaces were engineered with symmetry and order. Rome did not just grow upward and outward, it projected confidence. In a world defined by instability, Rome radiated control. At the center of it all stood the Roman Forum. If you imagine Washington, D.C.'s National Mall, Wall Street's financial gravity, and the Supreme Court's authority condensed into a single district, you begin to grasp its role. The Forum was where policy was debated, alliances forged, fortunes made, and wars justified. Foreign kings traveled thousands of miles to stand there, seeking favor or fearing consequence. Every major decision that shaped 3 continents passed through this plaza of stone. Within the Forum stood the Curia, the Senate House. From the outside it appeared restrained, almost modest compared to grand temples nearby. But inside those walls, ideas were refined that still shape modern civilization. Senators in white togas argued about governance, taxation, citizenship, military campaigns, and the rights of individuals under the law. The concept that no man stands above the law, that an accused person deserves a defense, that contracts bind parties in mutual obligation, these principles were debated and recorded here. For entrepreneurs, attorneys, and builders of modern institutions, this is familiar ground. The DNA of corporate law, constitutional systems, and civil procedure traces back to rooms like this. Power in Rome was never purely political, it was also spiritual. Rising above the Forum on the Capitoline Hill stood the temple of Jupiter Optimus Maximus, dedicated to the king of the Roman gods. Its roof shimmered with gold. Travelers approaching the city could see it glinting from miles away. The message was unmistakable: Rome's authority was sanctioned by heaven. Religion and state were intertwined, reinforcing one another. Victory in war, prosperity in trade, and stability at home were interpreted as evidence that the gods favored Rome's mission. This fusion of political discipline and divine legitimacy created a framework few could challenge. And the results were measurable. During this period, Rome guaranteed something unprecedented in scale: the Pax Romana, the Roman peace. For roughly 2 centuries, from the reign of Augustus through emperors like Hadrian and beyond, the Mediterranean world experienced a level of stability that had never existed before. Under the Pax Romana, a merchant could travel from the province of Syria to the Atlantic coast of Hispania, modern Spain and Portugal, using the same currency, protected by the same laws, guarded by the same military structure. Contracts signed in one province were recognized in another. Disputes could be appealed through established legal channels. Piracy diminished. Trade flourished. Infrastructure connected distant territories with astonishing reliability. Think about what that means in practical terms. Stability reduces risk. Reduced risk encourages investment. Investment fuels innovation and growth. Rome understood this instinctively. Its roads, legal systems, and administrative networks formed a framework that allowed commerce to scale across thousands of miles. In many ways, it was an ancient prototype of globalization, without satellites or fiber optics, yet astonishingly effective. Hadrian himself embodied this systemic mindset. Unlike emperors obsessed solely with conquest, he focused on consolidation and refinement. He traveled extensively across the empire, inspecting provinces, reinforcing borders, standardizing governance. His approach was not merely expansion but sustainability. The empire at its height was not chaotic sprawl, it was managed scale. What made Rome extraordinary was not just the magnitude of its buildings or the number of its citizens. It was the integration of systems. Political authority, legal structure, religious symbolism, economic policy, and urban planning worked in concert. The marble temples were not hollow displays. They were expressions of institutional confidence backed by disciplined administration and professional military force. For a modern American audience, especially those building businesses, launching ventures, or creating content at scale, there is something deeply familiar here. Rome succeeded because it mastered organization. It standardized processes. It codified rules. It invested heavily in infrastructure before reaping returns. It aligned narrative, power, and policy into a coherent brand of civilization. And at the heart of it all stood a city that defied historical precedent. 1 million people living in relative order. Clean water delivered across miles. Legal disputes adjudicated in structured forums. Massive construction projects completed without modern machinery. A political center that influenced territories stretching from northern Britain to the edges of the Middle East. In 125 AD, Rome was not simply surviving. It was orchestrating. It had engineered a model of governance and urban life that would echo across millennia. The United States Senate, federal courtrooms, domed Capitol buildings, and even the language of citizenship carry shadows of those marble steps. When we look at Rome in its prime, we are not looking at a distant curiosity. We are looking at a prototype, a civilization that understood scale, stability, and the power of shared systems. In the forum's debates, in the Senate's procedures, in the golden temples crowning the hills, Rome built more than monuments. It built a framework for how complex societies could function, expand, and endure. That is what made 125 AD extraordinary. Not just grandeur, but structure. Not just dominance, but design. And in that design, the blueprint of much of the modern Western world quietly took shape. If Rome's political system was the brain of the empire, its engineering was the muscle, and in 125 AD, that muscle was fully developed. This was not a civilization improvising its way forward. It was building systems designed to scale. Every street, aqueduct, marketplace, and arena formed part of a larger machine that kept nearly 1 million people fed, entertained, and aligned under one identity. At the spiritual center of the city burned a small but powerful symbol, the sacred flame of Vesta. Tended by the Vestal virgins, it represented Rome's eternal life. As long as the flame burned, Rome endured. In a city obsessed with scale and expansion, this quiet fire grounded everything in continuity. Even emperors showed respect when passing the priestesses. The message was subtle but clear: technology and power mattered, but stability of belief anchored the system. Now step into the streets. Rome did something revolutionary for its time. It built upward. The insulae, multi-story apartment buildings, rose 6 or 7 floors high, creating dense urban corridors that would feel surprisingly familiar to anyone who has walked through Manhattan or downtown Chicago. These structures housed the working and middle classes: merchants, laborers, artisans, immigrants from every province of the empire. Rome was not a collection of villas, it was a vertical metropolis. Density fueled commerce. And commerce in Rome was global. Walk through its markets and you would find silk from China, spices from India, ivory from Africa, and amber from the Baltic. This was not a local economy. It was an interconnected network stretching across continents. The empire's stability allowed supply chains to function at astonishing distances. Long before cargo ships and air freight, Rome had mastered logistics. At the center of this commercial ecosystem stood Trajan's Market, often described as the world's first shopping mall. Built into a hillside in a series of levels and corridors, it housed dozens of shops and administrative offices. You could purchase fine fabrics, household goods, food, imported luxuries, all organized within a carefully designed architectural complex. For modern entrepreneurs, this is recognizable, curated retail space, mixed-use development, integrated commerce. Rome understood customer flow and spatial efficiency long before those terms existed. But none of this scale worked without infrastructure. Roman roads were the arteries of empire. The Via Appia, known as the Queen of Roads, was engineered with layered stone, gravel, and volcanic concrete, forming a surface so durable that portions still underpin modern European highways. These roads were straight, intentional, and built for speed. A Roman legion could march 20 to 25 miles a day because the ground beneath them was engineered for it. Military mobility meant economic security, and economic security meant growth. Yet perhaps the most astonishing feat of Roman engineering was invisible from ground level. Look up, and you would see arches stretching across valleys, the aqueducts. 11 major aqueduct systems fed the city of Rome, carrying fresh water from mountains as far as 50 miles away. They required no pumps, no electricity, only gravity and precise mathematical calculation. Slight gradients maintained steady flow across miles of terrain. These were rivers in the sky. That water changed everything. Rome became a city of fountains. On nearly every corner, fresh water poured freely into public basins. Access to clean water was not a luxury reserved for elites. It was embedded into daily life. In an era when most cities struggled with sanitation, Rome engineered public hygiene at scale. Abundant water fed sewage systems, flushed waste, and reduced disease. It was a technological advantage that translated directly into population density and economic output. The water also powered one of Rome's most impressive public institutions, the baths of Trajan. These were not simple bathhouses. They were sprawling leisure complexes featuring hot and cold pools, exercise yards, libraries, gardens, and social halls. Admission fees were minimal, making them accessible even to ordinary citizens. Imagine a combination of a fitness center, community hub, spa, and cultural space, open to the public. In Rome, civic luxury reinforced social cohesion. When people feel included in the system, they defend it. Of course, Rome also understood the psychology of spectacle. Rising above the city stood the Colosseum, an architectural statement of order and power. Clad in travertine marble, capable of seating 50 to 80,000 spectators, it was a masterclass in crowd engineering. Entry tickets were marked with specific gate and seat numbers, just like modern stadiums. The structure's corridors and stairways allowed the entire arena to fill or empty in minutes. Efficiency was not incidental, it was designed. Above the seating extended the velarium, a massive retractable awning operated by sailors from the imperial fleet. With ropes and pulleys, they adjusted the canvas to shade spectators from the Mediterranean sun. This was naval engineering repurposed for public comfort. Rome didn't just dominate nature, it engineered around it. In the arena below, gladiators fought. Contrary to popular myth, these were not random slaughter victims. Many were highly trained professionals, admired for discipline, courage, and endurance. They were the celebrities of their time. Their names were etched into graffiti, their victories celebrated. They represented the Roman virtues of resilience and mastery under pressure. In a culture that valued strength and perseverance, gladiators embodied the brand. If the Colosseum was breathtaking, the Circus Maximus was colossal. This massive chariot racing stadium could hold more than 150,000 spectators, nearly a quarter of the city's population in one place. When the races began, the energy must have been seismic. 4 main factions, reds, blues, greens, and whites, divided the crowd with team loyalty that rivaled modern sports fandom. Entire neighborhoods aligned with their colors. The star drivers were more than athletes. They were economic phenomena. The most famous, Gaius Appuleius Diocles, accumulated winnings that, adjusted for modern value, would exceed billions of dollars. He may have been the highest-paid athlete in history. Rome rewarded excellence with staggering wealth. Performance translated into status, sponsorship, and social mobility. The entertainment economy was already sophisticated. Through all of this, apartments stacked high, global goods flowing through markets, roads stretching across continents, aqueducts arching over valleys, stadiums roaring with spectators, Rome demonstrated something rare: technological integration at scale. Every system supported another. Roads fed markets. Markets funded public works. Aqueducts sustained density. Entertainment reinforced identity. Engineering enabled empire. For a modern audience accustomed to skyscrapers, highways, and streaming entertainment, it's tempting to underestimate this achievement. But remember the timeline. This was 125 AD. No electricity. No engines. No digital tools. And yet, Rome built a city that functioned with a level of coordination that rivals many modern urban centers. What made Rome extraordinary was not isolated brilliance. It was systemic thinking. It designed infrastructure that empowered daily life while reinforcing loyalty to the state. It understood that stability required both function and inspiration. Technology kept the city alive. Spectacle kept it united. In that fusion of engineering, urban density, and mass entertainment, Rome didn't just build structures. It built an experience, one that made its citizens believe they were living at the center of the world. And in 125 AD, they truly were. Above the roar of the Circus Maximus and the crowded energy of the Forum rose the Palatine Hill, the most exclusive real estate in the ancient world. This was where power lived. From these heights, emperors looked down over the machinery of empire, the political debates in the Forum on one side, the thunder of chariot races on the other. The word palace itself traces back to this hill. It was more than a neighborhood, it was a statement. Rome did not hide its authority. It elevated it. By 125 AD, imperial residences had evolved into sprawling complexes that felt less like homes and more like self-contained cities. Marble imported from across the Mediterranean-lined hallways. Ceilings shimmered with gold leaf. Courtyards opened into manicured gardens with fountains engineered for both beauty and cooling airflow. Beneath the floors ran hypocaust systems, an early form of central heating. Warm air circulated under raised stone surfaces, heating entire rooms during winter months. In summer, fountains and shaded porticos moderated the heat. Comfort was engineered. Luxury was systematic. But splendor required protection. Guarding the emperor and securing the heart of the capital was the Praetorian Guard, an elite force selected for loyalty and skill. Their polished armor and deep purple cloaks made them instantly recognizable. They were not ordinary soldiers. They were a political instrument. Their presence signaled stability. In a city of nearly 1 million people, where influence and ambition intersected daily, the Praetorians ensured that the chain of command remained intact. power in Rome was not abstract. It was defended, visible, and disciplined. Yet the true secret behind Rome's enduring power was not its gold or its guards. It was material science. Roman concrete, a mixture of volcanic ash and lime, possessed properties modern engineers still study with admiration. Unlike many modern materials that weaken over time, Roman concrete can grow stronger when exposed to water. This innovation allowed the empire to construct harbors, bridges, and massive vaulted ceilings that have survived nearly 2 millennia. While contemporary buildings are often designed with a lifespan measured in decades, Roman structures were built with eternity in mind. The most breathtaking example of this genius stands in the heart of the city, the Pantheon. Commissioned during the reign of Emperor Hadrian, the Pantheon remains the largest unreinforced concrete dome in the world nearly 2,000 years after its completion. Step inside and the space feels almost impossible. The dome rises in perfect proportion, its weight distributed through precisely engineered coffers that lighten the load without compromising strength. At its center, the oculus, an open circular eye to the sky, allows sunlight to pour into the interior, moving across the floor like a cosmic spotlight throughout the day. It is not just architecture, it is mathematics rendered in stone. Modern architects still analyze it, searching for the formulas Rome mastered without digital modeling or steel reinforcement. Rome's power, however, was never limited to structures. It was intellectual as well as physical. The city hosted public libraries divided into Greek and Latin sections, reflecting a civilization that absorbed and refined knowledge from conquered cultures. Poets like Virgil and Ovid shaped literary identity. Historians such as Livy chronicled Rome's rise, embedding its narrative into collective memory. Education and rhetoric were pathways to advancement. In an empire that valued persuasion, words were weapons. Medical knowledge advanced in parallel. Military hospitals treated wounded soldiers with surgical instruments that resemble tools still used today. Public sanitation systems, latrines connected to flowing water, organized waste management, demonstrated a sophisticated understanding of hygiene's importance. Clean water from aqueducts was not simply a convenience, it was a strategic advantage. A healthier population meant a stronger workforce and a more resilient army. And that army was perhaps Rome's most formidable achievement. The Roman legions were not loose bands of warriors driven by emotion. They were professional units defined by training, discipline, and cohesion. Each legionary carried standardized equipment: shield, short sword, javelins, armor. They drilled relentlessly. They marched in formation. They fought as a coordinated body rather than as individuals seeking glory. Discipline was their weapon. What set them apart further was their dual identity as engineers. A legion could construct fortified camps at the end of a day's march, build bridges across major rivers within days, and lay down roads as they advanced. When they crossed the Rhine River, they did not merely find a way around it, they built over it. Wherever the legions traveled, infrastructure followed. Forts became towns. Roads became trade routes. Conquest became integration. This integration leads to what may be Rome's most revolutionary contribution: citizenship. In much of the ancient world, identity was local and exclusive. In Rome, it evolved into something portable and scalable. A person born in Spain, North Africa, or the Near East could become Roman, not by ethnicity, but by law. Citizenship granted rights, legal protection, the ability to contract, to marry under Roman law, to appeal judicial decisions. It was both a privilege and a bond. For ambitious individuals across the empire, citizenship represented opportunity. It transformed former enemies into stakeholders. It aligned diverse cultures under a shared framework without erasing local identities. This flexibility allowed Rome to expand without fracturing under its own size. It was a governance model built not solely on domination, but on incorporation. From the marble halls of the Palatine to the disciplined ranks of the legions, Rome in 125 AD embodied a complete system of power. It combined spectacle with substance, comfort with control, culture with coercion. It invested in infrastructure, knowledge, and identity simultaneously. Nothing operated in isolation. The emperor's palace symbolized authority, but that authority rested on durable materials, professional soldiers, codified law, and an inclusive concept of belonging. For a modern audience, entrepreneurs building scalable companies, creators crafting global brands, professionals navigating complex systems, Rome's lesson is unmistakable. Enduring power requires structure. It demands materials that last, institutions that function, and narratives that unify. Rome engineered all three. The empire's political dominance would eventually fade, but the systems it perfected continue to shape our world. Domed Capitol buildings echo the Pantheon. Legal principles debated in Roman courts underpin modern jurisprudence. Concepts of citizenship and civic duty remain foundational to democratic societies. Even the idea that infrastructure precedes prosperity reflects Roman logic. In 125 AD, Rome stood not merely as a superpower, but as a blueprint. Its palaces symbolized authority. Its concrete defied time. Its libraries preserved knowledge. Its legions enforced order. And its citizenship model bound millions into a shared identity. It was a civilization that understood how to combine strength with structure, and in doing so, it defined what enduring power truly looks like. Empires rise, empires fall, but some ideas refuse to die. Rome eventually transformed. The imperial capital that once honored Jupiter and Mars gradually became the spiritual center of Christianity. Temples turned into churches. The Pantheon became consecrated ground. Political authority shifted east to Constantinople, and centuries later the Western Empire fractured under pressure. Yet even as armies sacked the city, the idea of Rome endured. Because Rome was never just territory. It was a system. Its legal codes shaped the foundations of Western jurisprudence. The concepts of contracts, private property, habeas corpus, and structured courts still define modern societies. The Latin language evolved into Spanish, French, Italian, Portuguese, and deeply influenced English. The alphabet you read, the calendar you use, even the architecture of Washington, D.C., Paris, and countless state capitals echo Roman design. Domes, columns, arches, visual symbols of authority that trace back to marble hills overlooking the Forum. While Egypt gave us pyramids and Greece gave us philosophy, Rome fused infrastructure, law, military organization, and urban life into one scalable civilization. It built for time itself, and in many ways it won. Its roads still shape Europe. Its concrete still stands. And beneath modern Rome, archaeologists continue to uncover layers of a city that refuses to disappear. If this journey through 125 AD helped you see not just ancient ruins, but the blueprint of the modern world, subscribe to the channel. We're rebuilding the greatest civilizations in history, not as myths, but as living systems you can experience. Join us for the next reconstruction, and let's continue exploring where our world truly began.